The twins and their father's test. Once upon a time, in a bustling town nestled by the riverbanks, there lived a renowned merchant named Odinika. Known for his vast wealth and impeccable business acumen, Odinika had built an empire that stretched far beyond the borders of his homeland. Yet, despite his success, his greatest treasures were his twin sons, Chuka and Obina. Chuka, the elder by mere minutes, was a man of ambition and pride. He carried himself with an air of superiority, often dismissing the less fortunate as lazy and undeserving. Obina, on the other hand, was gentle-hearted and empathetic. He spent his days helping those in need, earning the admiration and respect of everyone around him. As Odinika grew older, he began contemplating his legacy. Though he loved both sons dearly, he knew the future of his empire depended on choosing the right successor. One evening, he summoned Chuka and Obina to his grand hall for an important meeting. The room, adorned with golden tapestries and fine carvings, was a testament to his success. "My sons," Odinika began, his voice steady but filled with gravity, "I have worked tirelessly to build this empire, but my time to lead it is coming to an end. The question now is, who among you will inherit it?" Chuka straightened his posture, a confident smirk on his face. "Father, the answer is obvious. I am the elder son, and by tradition, I am your rightful heir." Odinika's expression remained calm as he gestured for silence. "Tradition alone is not enough, Chuka. Leadership requires more than age, it demands wisdom, integrity, and a partner who will guide and support you. That is why I have decided to set a challenge." The brothers exchanged curious glances. Obina spoke up, his tone measured. "What is the challenge, father?" Odinika leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "You both have 1 year to find a virtuous wife who loves you for who you are, not for your wealth or status. The one who returns with such a woman will inherit my empire." Chuka scoffed, his voice laced with arrogance. "Father, that is a trivial task. I can find a dozen women by the end of the week who would marry me." Obina, however, nodded thoughtfully. "Father, this is a wise test. A true leader must be discerning and humble. I accept your challenge." Odinika smiled at his younger son's response but maintained his composure. "There are conditions. From this moment, neither of you will have access to my wealth. You will each receive a modest sum, enough to live on for 3 months. You must leave this house and start anew, relying on your own abilities to sustain yourselves and find a worthy partner." The room fell silent as the gravity of the challenge settled in. Chuka's confident smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of annoyance. "This is absurd, father. How can you expect us to live like commoners? What kind of test is this?" "It is a test of character," Odinika replied firmly. "You must learn to value the things that truly matter in life. Now, prepare yourselves. You have 1 week to leave this home and begin your journey." Obina stood and bowed respectfully. "Thank you, father. I will not disappoint you." He left the hall with determination etched on his face. Chuka, on the other hand, remained seated, seething with frustration. "This is ridiculous," he muttered under his breath. But he knew he had no choice but to comply. In the days that followed, the brothers prepared for their respective journeys. Obina packed simple clothes and essentials, his heart set on discovering a woman who would love him for his kindness and character. Before leaving, he made a decision: he would disguise himself as a poor fisherman in a distant village, ensuring that any woman he met would not be swayed by wealth or privilege. Chuka, however, had no intention of enduring hardship. "Why should I lower myself to the level of commoners?" he thought. Instead, he devised a plan to use his cunning and charm to secure a bride who appeared virtuous enough to please his father. As the week came to an end, both brothers bid farewell to their childhood home. Obinna set out with a heart full of hope and a humble resolve, while Chuka embarked on his journey with a mind clouded by ambition and shortcuts. Their paths, though divergent, were bound to cross again, and their father's challenge would reveal not only the true heir but also the strength of their character. Obinna's humble journey. With a small bundle of clothes and the modest sum his father had provided, Obinna began his journey away from the life of wealth and privilege he had always known. He traveled for days, moving further away from the bustling town of his upbringing to a remote village called Ameyi, nestled between lush green hills and a sparkling river. Arriving at Ameyi. The village was a stark contrast to the grand estates and busy markets Obinna was used to. The houses were made of mud and thatch, and the villagers earned their livelihood through farming, fishing, and trading. The simplicity of life in Ameyi appealed to Obinna. It felt like the perfect place to begin his test of character. Before entering the village, he stopped at a quiet grove by the river and unpacked a wheelchair he had purchased along the way. To ensure no one would recognize him or suspect his true identity, he decided to pose as a crippled fisherman. He practiced moving around in the wheelchair and adjusted his posture to appear genuinely disabled. With his disguise complete, he wheeled himself into Ameyi. The villagers were polite but wary of the newcomer. Obinna noticed the skepticism in their eyes as they watched him roll his chair through the narrow, dusty paths. However, he greeted everyone with warmth, offering a smile and kind words. He rented a small, run-down hut on the outskirts of the village. It was humble and bare, but Obinna found comfort in its simplicity. His first night in Ameyi was quiet, but he felt a renewed sense of purpose. If I can find someone who accepts me like this, he thought, she will surely love me for who I am. Starting a new life. The next morning, Obinna ventured to the bustling market in the village square. Farmers and traders called out to customers, and children ran through the crowd, laughing and playing. Obinna stopped at a fish stall run by a gruff but kind-hearted man named Ifoni. After some polite negotiation, Obinna purchased a small basket of fish and began selling them from his wheelchair at the edge of the market. At first, business was slow. Villagers seemed hesitant to buy from a stranger, especially one they perceived as weak or helpless. Undeterred, Obinna treated every passerby with respect and kindness. He offered discounts to families with little money and gave away free fish to those who couldn't afford to buy. Slowly but surely, word spread about the crippled fisherman with a heart of gold. Within weeks, Obinna had earned the trust and goodwill of the villagers. His small business began to thrive, and he used his earnings to improve his hut and buy supplies to expand his trade. Despite his growing success, he continued to live humbly, avoiding any sign of excess that might reveal his true background. Meeting Ada. One evening, while Obinna was packing up his stall at the market, a sudden commotion drew his attention. A group of children had accidentally overturned a basket of yams onto the dusty road, and a young woman was hurriedly trying to gather them while scolding the giggling culprits. Obinna watched as the woman, tall, with kind eyes and a radiant smile, picked up the yams with practiced ease. She wore a simple but colorful wrapper, and her hair was neatly braided. The children ran off, and she sighed in exasperation, muttering under her breath. "Do you need help?" Obinna called out. The woman turned toward him, startled. Seeing his wheelchair, she hesitated for a moment before walking over. "Oh, no, thank you," she said. "I can manage. But I appreciate your kindness." Obinna introduced himself, and the woman smiled warmly. "I'm Ada," she said. "My family farms yams, and I come to the market to sell them. The children around here can be a handful." Obinna chuckled. "They remind me of my younger days. Mischief is a part of growing up." Ada laughed, and they began talking. She mentioned that she lived with her mother, who was sickly, and her younger siblings, whom she helped care for. Obina was struck by her selflessness and the way her eyes lit up even when speaking of her struggles. Before parting, she handed him a small yam as a gesture of goodwill. "Thank you for offering to help," she said. "Maybe I'll see you around." Building a friendship. Over the next few weeks, Obina and Ada crossed paths frequently. She often stopped by his stall to chat or bring him small treats from her farm. In turn, Obina made it a point to save the best fish for her family and refused to take payment when she insisted on buying. Their conversations grew deeper as they shared stories about their lives. Obina told Ada a fabricated tale of losing his ability to walk in an accident, emphasizing how it had taught him the value of hard work and kindness. Ada admired his resilience and often encouraged him when he spoke of the difficulties of living with a disability. Obina, for his part, was careful to keep his true identity hidden. He wanted Ada to know him as the humble fisherman, not the wealthy son of a merchant. The more time he spent with her, the more he realized how rare her qualities were: compassion, humility, and unwavering loyalty to her family. A test of character. One rainy evening, as Obina was closing his stall, he saw Ada struggling to carry a large basket of yams through the muddy streets. Without hesitation, he wheeled himself over and offered to help. Ada hesitated, not wanting to burden him, but Obina insisted. Together, they managed to transport the basket to her home, a modest compound on the edge of the village. Ada's mother, a frail but kind woman, greeted them warmly and thanked Obina profusely. Ada's siblings, wide-eyed and curious, stared at the man in the wheelchair who had come to their aid. As they sat by the fire, Ada's mother spoke of the hardships they had faced since her husband's passing. Obina listened intently, his respect for Ada growing with every word. Despite their struggles, the family radiated warmth and gratitude, qualities Obina found deeply moving. That night, as he wheeled himself back to his hut, Obina couldn't shake the thought of Ada. Could she be the one, he wondered. But he knew he needed more time to be certain. He resolved to continue testing her character, knowing that the truth of her heart would reveal itself in due course. Chuka's dangerous shortcut. Unlike his brother Obina, who sought to prove his worth through humility and hard work, Chuka was determined to find an easier path to wealth and success. Leaving their father's home with the same modest sum of money, Chuka traveled to the grand city of Onika, a place renowned for its luxurious lifestyle and opportunities. However, Chuka's arrogance and recklessness quickly led him astray. A desperate gamble. In Onika, Chuka squandered his funds on lavish meals, fine clothes, and nights of revelry. Within a month, he was penniless. Bitter and resentful, he began frequenting shady establishments, hoping to overhear gossip about shortcuts to wealth. One night, in the dimly lit corner of a crowded tavern, Chuka overheard two merchants discussing a woman named Nwaninho. The name immediately piqued his interest. "She's no ordinary woman," one merchant whispered. "They say she can grant unimaginable wealth, but her price is high." "High," the other replied. "That's putting it mildly. Everyone who's gone to her ends up regretting it." Chuka leaned in closer, intrigued. "What kind of regrets?" he asked, feigning casual curiosity. The merchants exchanged wary glances before one answered, "No one knows for sure, but the wealth comes with conditions. If you break her rules, the consequences are devastating." Ignoring their warnings, Chuka pressed them for more information. After persistent questioning, they revealed the location of Nwaninko's mansion, a secluded estate deep in the forest outside Onika. The mansion of Nwaninko. The next day, Chuka made his way to the mansion. The journey was arduous, with winding paths and dense foliage, but he pressed on, driven by greed and desperation. When he finally arrived, he was awestruck. The mansion was enormous, adorned with golden gates and intricate carvings that shimmered in the sunlight. It stood as a stark contrast to the poverty Chuka had recently endured. A servant greeted him at the gate and led him inside. The interior of the mansion was even more opulent, with marble floors, towering chandeliers, and walls lined with rare artwork. As Chuka marveled at his surroundings, a figure emerged, a striking woman dressed in flowing robes of crimson and gold. Her presence was commanding, her eyes piercing. "I am Nwaninka," she said, her voice smooth and melodic. "What brings you here, stranger?" Chuka knelt before her, a mix of awe and ambition in his voice. "I have heard of your power. I seek wealth, enough to secure my father's inheritance and live the life I deserve." Nwaninka studied him carefully, her expression unreadable. "Wealth always comes at a cost," she said. "Are you prepared to pay it?" Without hesitation, Chuka nodded. "I am prepared to do whatever it takes." The offer. Nwaninka led Chuka to a grand chamber filled with relics and treasures. At the center of the room stood a pedestal holding a black, intricately designed bag. "This," she said, gesturing to the bag, "is your key to wealth. Inside lives Amora, a spirit bound to my service. By night, she is a beautiful woman. By day, she rests as a serpent within this bag. Each time you sleep with her, she will fill the bag with gold by morning." Chuka's eyes widened in disbelief. "Gold? Every night?" "Yes," Nwaninka replied, her tone sharp. "But there are 3 rules you must follow. Break them, and the consequences will be dire." Chuka leaned in, eager to hear the conditions. "First," Nwaninka began, "you must sleep with Amora at least twice a week. Neglect her, and the wealth will vanish. Second, no one must ever see her in her serpent or human form. She belongs to you and you alone. Finally, you must not fall in love with any other woman. Amora will not share her devotion." Chuka considered the rules, his greed clouding his judgment. The conditions seemed simple enough, and the promise of wealth outweighed any potential risks. "I agree," he said confidently. "I will follow your rules." Nwaninka's lips curled into a knowing smile. "Very well. Take the bag, and remember my warnings. Do not test the limits of our patience, or mine." Amora's introduction. That night, Chuka returned to his rented room in the city, clutching the magical bag. As midnight approached, he opened the bag as instructed. To his astonishment, a glittering serpent slithered out, its scales shimmering like precious gems. The serpent coiled on the floor before transforming into a breathtaking woman. Amora was unlike anyone Chuka had ever seen. Her hair cascaded like silk, her eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and her voice was sweet and hypnotic. "I am yours," she said, her tone both alluring and ominous. "Treat me well, and I will grant you all the riches you desire." Chuka, entranced by her beauty, wasted no time in fulfilling the first condition. By morning, the bag was brimming with gold coins, far more than he had ever imagined. Blinded by greed, Chuka quickly embraced his newfound wealth. He moved into a lavish mansion, bought expensive clothes, and threw extravagant parties, becoming a sensation in the city. Every night, he slept with Amora, and every morning, his bag overflowed with gold. Though he reveled in his fortune, Chuka found himself drawn to the attention of other women. His charm and riches made him a magnet for admirers, but he remembered Nwaninka's warnings and refrained from pursuing them, for now. Still, Chuka could not shake a growing unease. While Amora fulfilled her promise, her presence was unsettling. Her beauty was intoxicating, but her gaze often carried an intensity that sent shivers down his spine. And though she obeyed him without question, Chuka felt as though he were the one trapped in her web, foreshadowing the consequences. As the weeks went by, Chuka began to test the boundaries of Nwaninka's rules. He grew careless, inviting guests to his mansion at odd hours, risking the chance of someone discovering Amora. He also began to resent the obligation of sleeping with her, longing for the freedom to pursue other women without consequence. But for now, Chuka's greed outweighed his doubts. He convinced himself that he was in control, blind to the storm brewing on the horizon. Obinna and Ada's growing bond. Days turned into weeks, and Obinna and Ada began to spend more time together. Each encounter deepened their connection, and Obinna grew increasingly fond of Ada's quiet strength and unwavering kindness. Her laughter was like music, and her presence brought a warmth to his otherwise lonely days in the village. A glimpse into Ada's world. One afternoon, as the sun bathed the village in a golden glow, Obinna spotted Ada by the river, washing clothes. He wheeled himself over, calling out a cheerful greeting. She looked up, smiling when she saw him. "You always manage to find me during my busiest moments," she teased. "Perhaps I'm drawn to where the hardest work is being done," Obinna replied with a grin. "May I help?" Ada laughed softly. "You've helped enough by being kind to my family. The fish you bring is a blessing for us." Encouraged by her warmth, Obinna asked, "Tell me about your family. You've mentioned them before, but I'd love to know more." Ada hesitated, her expression clouding for a moment, but she nodded. "There isn't much to tell. My father passed away years ago, leaving my mother to care for my siblings and me. She fell ill not long after, and since then, I've been doing my best to keep us afloat." Obinna noticed the weight in her voice and the way she avoided his gaze. "That's a lot for one person to handle," he said gently. "You're incredibly strong, Ada." She shrugged, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I do what I must. My younger brothers and sisters depend on me. Some days are harder than others, but we get by." Her words struck Obinna deeply. He saw in her a quiet resilience that reminded him of his late mother. "You're remarkable," he said sincerely. "Not everyone would shoulder such a burden with so much grace." Ada smiled faintly, but her eyes remained distant. "You'd be surprised what people can do when they have no other choice." Small gestures of kindness. Over time, Obinna found subtle ways to ease Ada's burdens. He began delivering extra fish to her family without asking for payment. When her siblings needed school supplies, he quietly purchased them, leaving the items by their door with no note. Ada suspected his involvement but never confronted him about it, though her gratitude shone in her eyes whenever they met. One day, Ada invited Obinna to her home for a meal. Her family welcomed him warmly, treating him like an honored guest. Her siblings giggled as they asked questions about his life as a fisherman, while her mother watched the scene with a gentle smile. As they shared a simple but hearty meal, Obinna felt a sense of belonging he hadn't experienced in years. The love and unity in Ada's home were unlike anything money could buy, and he admired her even more for being the glue that held it all together. The dilemma of truth. Despite their growing closeness, Obinna grappled with an inner conflict. He had come to Ameyi under false pretenses, disguising himself as a poor fisherman to find a woman who would love him for who he truly was. Ada, with her selflessness and compassion, seemed to embody everything his father valued. But how could he be sure her feelings were genuine if she didn't know the truth about him? One evening, as they sat beneath the shade of a mango tree, watching the sun set over the hills, Obinna turned to Ada. "Do you ever think about leaving this village?" he asked. Ada looked surprised. "Leave? Where would I go? My family needs me here." "But what about your own dreams?" Obinna pressed. "If you could do anything, be anywhere, what would you choose?" Ada fell silent, gazing at the horizon. "I've never thought about it like that," she admitted. "My life has always been about survival, not dreams. Maybe, if things were different, I'd like to see the world beyond this village. But that's not my reality." Obinna admired her selflessness, but her words also filled him with guilt. He had the means to change her life, to give her the freedom to dream, yet he was bound by the conditions of his father's test. Revealing his true identity too soon could jeopardize everything. Maybe one day, things will change, he said softly. You deserve more than this village can offer. Ada smiled, her expression bittersweet. Perhaps. But for now, I'll take life one day at a time. A moment of vulnerability. The turning point in their relationship came one stormy evening. Obinna was closing up his store when the rain began to pour, soaking the village in minutes. As he wheeled himself toward his hut, he saw Ada struggling to carry a bundle of firewood through the downpour. Without hesitation, he hurried to her side. Let me help, he said, reaching for the bundle. You'll get soaked, she protested. I'm already wet, he replied, smiling through the rain. It doesn't matter. Together, they carried the firewood to Ada's home. Her mother and siblings welcomed Obinna inside, offering him a dry cloth and a warm drink. As the rain thundered against the roof, Ada sat beside him, her face glowing in the dim firelight. Why are you so kind to us? She asked suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. Obinna hesitated, unsure how to answer. Because you deserve it, he said finally. You've shown me more kindness than I could ever repay. Ada studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. You're different from anyone I've ever met, she said. Thank you for being here. Obinna's heart swelled at her words, but the weight of his deception loomed over him. He resolved to continue testing her character, knowing that the truth would have to come out eventually. For now, he would cherish the bond they had built and hope it could withstand the revelations to come. Chuka's rise and fall. With Amora, the snake woman, by his side, Chuka's life transformed overnight. Each morning, after fulfilling his ritual with her, the magical bag brimmed with gold coins. Chuka's meteoric rise in wealth and status was swift, and the city of Onika buzzed with tales of his newfound fortune. The pinnacle of wealth. Chuka spared no expense in crafting an image of opulence. He purchased a sprawling mansion on the outskirts of Onika, its golden gates and marble walls a testament to his wealth. Expensive cars filled his driveway, and his wardrobe overflowed with the finest silks and tailored suits. He threw lavish parties attended by the city's elite, where wine flowed like water and no expense was spared. His name became synonymous with power and influence. Business tycoons, politicians, and socialites all sought his favor, unaware of the dark secret behind his success. Chuka basked in the attention, reveling in the adoration of those who once looked down on him. The void within. Despite his extravagant lifestyle, Chuka felt an emptiness he couldn't explain. Nights spent with Amora, though pleasurable, offered little emotional connection. Her beauty was undeniable, but her presence was cold, her affection mechanical. Though she fulfilled her role in granting him wealth, she remained a mysterious and distant figure. Chuka longed for genuine companionship, someone to share his victories and dreams. Yet, he was bound by the rules Noninka had imposed. The third rule, never fall in love with another woman, loomed over him like a curse. Still, his arrogance led him to believe he could outsmart the conditions of the deal. Meeting Ebo. One fateful evening, while attending a high-profile gala in the city, Chuka's eyes fell upon Ebo, a stunning woman whose beauty surpassed even Amora's. Ebo was the daughter of a prominent businessman, known for her intelligence, charm, and elegance. She moved through the crowd with effortless grace, drawing the admiration of everyone present. Chuka was captivated. For the first time in months, he felt a spark of excitement that went beyond material gain. Determined to win her over, he introduced himself, using his wealth and charisma to impress her. Ebo, intrigued by his confidence and charm, accepted his invitation to dinner the following evening. Their relationship blossomed quickly. Ebo admired Chuka's success and the life he had built, unaware of the dark secrets that fueled his wealth. Chuka, enchanted by her beauty and wit, became increasingly infatuated, ignoring the warnings that echoed in his mind. Defiance of the rules. Blinded by his desire for Ebo, Chuka decided to propose marriage. He convinced himself that non-cause warnings were mere superstition, relics of an outdated belief system. I am in control, he thought. She cannot harm me. Chuka spared no expense in planning the wedding, an extravagant affair that became the talk of the city. Guests arrived in droves, eager to witness the union of two influential families. The mansion was adorned with glittering lights and flowers, and a feast fit for royalty awaited the attendees. As the wedding day approached, Chuka became increasingly restless. He kept Amara confined to her bag, avoiding her altogether. Though he tried to suppress his unease, a nagging voice in the back of his mind warned him of the consequences he might face. The wedding night. After a day of celebration, Chuka and Ebo retired to the master bedroom of his mansion. The room was lavishly decorated, with a king-sized bed draped in silk sheets and candles casting a warm glow. As Chuka poured glasses of wine for himself and his new bride, a chill swept through the room, extinguishing the candles. Before Chuka could react, a familiar voice echoed through the darkness. You've broken the rules, Chuka. Chuka froze, his heart pounding. Amara emerged from the shadows, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. She was no longer the alluring woman he had known but a terrifying figure, her beauty twisted into something monstrous. Ebo screamed and backed away, unable to comprehend the horrifying sight before her. Amara. Chuka stammered, his voice shaking. I didn't mean to. You thought you could defy me? Amara hissed, her voice venomous. After all I have given you, you repay me with betrayal. Chuka fell to his knees, begging for forgiveness. Please, Amara. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just wanted. Silence, she roared. You were warned. You chose to ignore my rules, and now you will face the consequences. The curse unleashed. Amara raised her hands, and the room filled with a blinding light. When it faded, the mansion began to crumble, its luxurious walls and decorations disintegrating into dust. The bag that had once been Chuka's source of wealth turned to ash, and the gold it had produced vanished without a trace. Ebo, horrified and confused, fled the mansion, leaving Chuka alone with Amara. She towered over him, her serpentine form fully revealed. You will lose everything you hold dear, she declared. Your wealth, your status, your sanity. And when I am done, you will be nothing but a shadow of the man you once were. As Amara disappeared into the night, Chuka was left trembling in the ruins of his former life. His wealth was gone, his reputation destroyed, and his mind teetering on the edge of madness. The price of his greed had been paid in full. The return to Odinika. The journey back to Odinika's estate was bittersweet for Obina. He had spent a year living humbly, forging a deep connection with Ada, the woman who had proven her love through her selflessness and integrity. As they approached the gates of his father's grand home, Obina felt a mixture of pride and nervousness. Ada, though supportive, was visibly apprehensive. Are you sure he will accept me? She asked quietly. Obina smiled reassuringly and held her hand. He will love you as I do. You are everything he hoped I would find. When they entered the estate, the staff hurried to inform Odinika of his son's return. The aging merchant, now grayer and slower, emerged with open arms. His face lit up with joy upon seeing Obina and Ede together. My son, he exclaimed, embracing Obina. And this must be the woman who captured your heart. Obina introduced Ada, who bowed respectfully. Odinika took her hands in his and studied her with kind, knowing eyes. You are exactly the kind of person I prayed he would find, he said warmly. Welcome to our family. Obina named as heir. After a celebratory feast, Odinika gathered the household for an official announcement. Standing beside Obina and Ada, he addressed the room. Today, I name Obina as my heir, he declared. He has proven his character by finding a partner who loves him not for his wealth, but for his heart. Together, they will lead our family with wisdom and integrity. The staff erupted in applause, and Obinna felt a wave of relief and gratitude. Ada, though overwhelmed, stood proudly beside him, her presence a testament to the values that had guided their journey. Chuka's fall from grace. Meanwhile, Chuka, now destitute and ostracized, wandered the streets of Onika. His once pristine clothes were tattered, and his face bore the weight of regret and despair. Shunned by those who had once praised him, he longed for redemption but lacked the courage to face his family. When word of Obinna's return reached Chuka, he decided to swallow his pride and seek forgiveness. The journey back to his father's estate was long and humiliating, but he knew it was his only hope. A brother's forgiveness. When Chuka arrived at the estate, the sight of him shocked everyone. The once proud man now stood before them as a shadow of his former self, his eyes hollow and his posture defeated. "Father," he said, falling to his knees before Odinika. "I have failed you. I let greed consume me, and I betrayed everything you taught us. Please, forgive me." Odinika's expression softened, though his disappointment was evident. "Chuka, I warned you about the dangers of greed. Yet, I am still your father, and I cannot abandon you." Chuka turned to Obinna, tears streaming down his face. "Brother, I wronged you. I mocked your humility and took shortcuts, thinking they would lead to success. Instead, I lost everything. Please, forgive me." Obinna stepped forward and placed a hand on Chuka's shoulder. "I forgive you, Chuka. But forgiveness is only the first step. You must rebuild your life with honesty and integrity. It's not too late to change." Chuka nodded, his tears flowing freely. "Thank you, brother. I will work to earn back the trust I've lost." A new chapter. With Obinna's support, Chuka began to rebuild his life. Odinika offered him a small role in the family business, giving him a chance to prove himself. Though the journey ahead was long, Chuka embraced it with humility, determined to learn from his mistakes. Obinna and Ada settled into their new roles as leaders of the family empire. Their love and partnership became an inspiration to everyone around them, a testament to the power of integrity, humility, and genuine connection. The moral of the story. In the end, Odinika gathered his sons and their families together, imparting words of wisdom. Wealth can be fleeting, but the values that guide us, honesty, humility, and love, are eternal. Remember that true success lies not in what we acquire, but in how we live and the relationships we nurture. The story of Chuka and Obinna became a lesson for generations to come, a reminder that shortcuts and greed can lead to ruin, while integrity and genuine love are the keys to a life well lived. The curse unfolds. The aftermath of betrayal. When the light of dawn broke over Onika, the once opulent mansion that had been the pride of Chuka was reduced to a pile of rubble. The luxurious cars, the glittering gold, and the lavish furnishings, all had vanished, leaving only the bitter taste of loss. Chuka stumbled through the wreckage, his once proud figure now hunched and broken. His nights became haunted by nightmares of Amora, her serpentine eyes glowing with fury as her voice echoed in his mind, "You will lose everything." His days were no better. Former friends and admirers avoided him, their laughter turning into whispers of mockery. The man who had been celebrated for his wealth was now a pariah. Chuka's desperation grew as his sanity began to wane. Shadows seemed to stalk him, and he often heard Amora's voice whispering in the wind. The world around him blurred, and the line between reality and hallucination began to fade. A plea for mercy. In his despair, Chuka decided to return to Nwaninka, the only person he believed could save him. The journey to her mansion was fraught with fear, as the once proud man now cowered at every rustling leaf and distant sound. When he finally reached her golden gates, he fell to his knees and pounded on them, his voice hoarse from shouting. Please, Nwaninka. I need your help. I beg you. The gates creaked open, and Nwaninka appeared, her expression as cold and unreadable as ever. She regarded Chuka with disdain. You dare return to me after defying my rules? Chuka prostrated himself before her. I was wrong. I was foolish. Please, undo the curse. I'll do anything. Nwaninka's voice was icy. You were warned, Chuka. The rules were clear, and yet you let your greed and arrogance lead you to betrayal. Amora was bound to you, and you broke that bond. I didn't mean to. You made your choice, she interrupted. And now, you must live with the consequences. I will not intervene. Tears streamed down Chuka's face as he realized the finality of her words. He stumbled out of the mansion, broken and defeated. His cries echoed in the forest as he vanished into the shadows, his mind unraveling with each step. Obina's confession. While Chuka's world crumbled, Obina's life in Ameyi continued to blossom. His bond with Ada deepened, and he marveled at her resilience and kindness. She had proven time and again that her heart was pure, and Obina knew it was time to reveal the truth about himself. One evening, as the village was bathed in the soft light of a full moon, Obina invited Ada to his modest hut. Inside, the air was filled with the warmth of the fire, and the simple furnishings reflected his carefully maintained disguise. Ada sat across from him, her expression curious. There's something I need to tell you, Obina began, his voice steady but tinged with nervousness. Something I've hidden from you since the day we met. Ada tilted her head, concern flickering in her eyes. What is it, Obina? You can tell me. Obina took a deep breath. I am not who you think I am. I came to this village not as a poor fisherman, but as the son of a wealthy merchant. My father sent me on a journey to find a woman who could love me for who I am, not for my wealth or status. Ada's eyes widened, her expression a mixture of shock and confusion. You mean, you've been pretending this whole time? Yes, Obina admitted, his gaze earnest. But everything else, the time we've spent together, the bond we've built, has been real. I needed to be certain that you saw me for the man I truly am, not the life I come from. Ada stared at him for a long moment, her emotions flickering across her face. Finally, she spoke, her voice quiet but firm. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I was afraid, Obina said. Afraid that if you knew the truth, you might see me differently. But I see now that I've wronged you by keeping this from you. I love you, Ada, and I want you to know the whole truth before I ask you this. Will you marry me? Ada's choice. Tears welled in Ada's eyes as she processed his words. She stood, pacing the room as her thoughts raced. Finally, she turned to face him, her voice steady. Obina, I've seen your kindness and your humility. You've shown me nothing but respect and care, even when you had no reason to. Your love is the one thing I've never doubted. Obina's heart swelled with hope as she approached him, a soft smile breaking through her tears. Yes, she said. I will marry you. Relief and joy washed over Obina as he took her hands in his. You have no idea how much this means to me, he said. Together, we can build a life of love and purpose. A new beginning. Obina and Ada's engagement was celebrated quietly in the village. Ada's family, though surprised by Obina's confession, accepted him warmly, grateful for the happiness he brought into their lives. With Ada by his side, Obina prepared to return to his father, confident that she was the virtuous woman his father had hoped he would find. Though the path ahead was uncertain, he felt ready to face whatever challenges awaited them, knowing their love was genuine.